for that, Bob.
Actually, was something he mentioned at the beginning. You've already had, this week in Brighton, one historic event, from what I understand. Reading the Brighton Argus that somebody gave me before the meeting started, it said it was the biggest trade union demo in 20 years that you organised against cuts on the streets of Brighton last Saturday. And I think this tonight as well, even though it's much smaller than the hundreds who went out on the streets against cuts, this will also go down as a historic occasion. And it does bear comparison with the foundation of the Labour Party, which Bob mentioned. The Labour Representation Committee was founded 110 years ago. It was 129 delegates. It was the forerunner of the RMT, the Railway Workers' Union at the time, and put a motion to the TUC that brought that conference about. And at the time, a socialist newspaper wrote about the conference. They said it was a little cloud on the horizon, no bigger than a man's hand, which may grow into a united Labour Party. Their first general election campaign in 1900 was very modest. Their total election expenditure was £33, which even to then was not a lot of money to spend on your general election. But as a result of the dedication, the determination of the working class men and women who founded that party, then they were able to turn it into a mass force. And in the 1910 general election, they were then able to get 42 MPs elected. Now, there's lots of things you can learn about the negative history of the Labour Party, but we also have to take something positive from that foundation, because it was ordinary workers who had decided they needed their own party, and they were told all of the things that we get told today. They were told, as Bob said, you can't split the vote. If you don't keep backing the Liberals, you'll let the Tories in. You're too small, you'll never get anywhere, you'll never be able to build anything under a first-past-the-post system. All the things that are put to us today were also put to them at that time. But their response was no. We are fed up of only backing parties of business. We need a party for working class people. And TUSC is not a party, it's a coalition for the general election. But we're standing for the same reasons that they stood back at the start of the last century. And it's modest at this stage. At the moment, I think there are 38 candidates confirmed for the Trade Union and Socialist Coalition around the country. There'll be more, but we're not going to be able to contest every seat. There will undoubtedly be lower votes for us at the polls than represent our real level of support, because there will be workers who read Dave's leaflets and say, I agree with every word you're saying, but I'm sorry, I've got, with gritted teeth, holding my nose, got to go and vote Labour to try and stop the Tories getting elected. So not everybody who agrees with us will go out and vote for us this time around. Now that's not to say we won't fight to get every vote possible and to stand in as many seats as possible. But this is an enormously important election coalition, almost regardless of the number of votes we get, many as we want, and the number of seats in we stand this time round. It's laying the foundation for independent working class representation. There are really two reasons that we think this coalition is so important. The first is because it involves trade union militants. And of course that's the leaders. It's great to have Bob Crow supporting it, Brian Caton from the Prison Officers Association, Janice Godrich and others from the Civil Servants Trade Union that have been out on strike for the last 2 days. But it's not mainly the leaders, it's the ordinary trade union activists. It's the number of RMT branches that want to back local candidates or stand themselves in the elections, the CWU branches that have given funds, and the many individual trade union activists who are inspired by this and are getting involved in it. And I would make a plea, those of you who are here, who are not yet involved in the campaign, but are part of a trade union, some of your trade union rules will allow you to back TUSC candidates, and we then ask you to go and argue that your local union branch gives support to the campaign here in Brighton, Kent Town. But other trade unions, which are tied at the top to the Labour Party, will not let you officially support the Trade Union Socialist Coalition as a branch, even if all of your branch members want to do it. But that doesn't stop you having a debate on the issues. You should still ask your branch to hold a discussion on the general election and invite Dave to speak, invite the Labour candidate to speak, invite the Tories if you want to, so that we can debate the issues out and reach trade union activists to explain why we're standing in this election. Because the other reason that this coalition is so important is because it's preparation for what's going to come after the general election, and Bob has already talked a little bit about that. We're going to have a continuation of economic crisis. There's no time to go into it tonight, but we may have, what, they've revised it up now, haven't they? 0.4% economic growth we got in the last quarter of last year. But we will probably get a double dip. But even if the economy kept growing a tiny little bit, which is not the most likely, it's not going to feel like it's growing.